Hey, church family, it is Monday morning, means time for some Motivational Monday. I'm Pastor Christopher here at Urbana United Methodist Church. We're so glad that you're joining with us. Saturday, our leadership team and staff spent an entire day at a retreat, worshiping, praying, seeking after God's will and vision for 2024 and beyond. And it was such an encouraging time for me, and just watching our team and our people come together and truly just seeing unity among them, but also just genuine joy, just for life, but also for the gospel, for Jesus, and how they love the church. It was just so encouraging to me. But during that time, I recognized how hard it is to give up a whole day to church stuff, and all of our people could be there, and everybody had great attitudes. But I know the sacrifice that it is to give up. We were there practically from 8 a.m. to 3:30, so a long day, right? On a Saturday when college football's on, there are youth sports happening. There's lots going on to give that up. To have our whole team there was a big sacrifice. But once we were all there, the value was so visible of the sacrifice, right? It was so good to be together. And it got me thinking, if we don't carve out time to do things like this, the opposite of what we hope to happen on a retreat will happen to us. So you hope for rest and renewal. If you never carve out time for those things, the opposite will happen, which is burnout and probably some cynicism, right? We planned this retreat earlier in the year, so everybody knew about it. It was 6 months into waiting, so it was easy to put on the calendar then. But I'm sure as the days got closer, it was like, oh man, I got this and this and this going on, because the world doesn't stop. And I think that's the point. The world doesn't stop, so we probably should, right? So I was reading in Mark chapter 6, verses 30 through 32, right before Jesus feeds the 5,000. And he said, this is what it says. It says, the apostles returned to Jesus from their ministry tour. They had just done a bunch of ministry around Jerusalem and Israel, and told him all that they had done and taught. Then Jesus said, let's go off by ourselves to a quiet place and rest a while. He said this because there were so many people coming and going that Jesus and his apostles didn't even have time to eat. Have you ever been there where you're just so busy you don't even have the time to eat? So they left by boat for a quiet place where they could be alone. I think that is so real that Jesus says, man, I don't even have time to eat. We got to get out of here. And I think for us, we can be like, what? Jesus, you don't want to be more productive? You don't want to heal more people? You don't want to do more miracles? Really? You don't want to preach more messages? You got stuff to do. Don't you know you're going to die in a couple years in this 3-year ministry span? Don't you know you got stuff to do, Jesus? But he talks about resting and going away and with his people. And so I think Jesus even recognized if he didn't rest and take a moment to rejuvenate, the world would take that from him by itself. So basically, if we don't take time to eat well, we know the consequences. If we don't take the time to get good sleep, we know the consequences. If we don't take the time to ever stop and review our life and do an inventory check, we know the consequences that are looming. It's ultimate, right? Like, we will eventually fall into a trap of burnout or chaos or pain or some terrible decision that we make that affects not just us, but the lives of many, many others, because we didn't take care of ourselves. Even Jesus here stopped doing ministry and did a different type of ministry, which is resting. So my motivation for you today is be intentional about Sabbath, which we call, which is based on the way the Jewish people in Israel practiced their rest day and how they worshiped. It was typically on Saturday, but as Christians, we do that on Sunday. Going to church is actually a rest. I mean, I think for a lot of people, when they come to even church on a Sunday, I don't know if they've just sat in one spot for an hour without somebody demanding something from them, or some kind of information from a television or your phone downloading into your head. I don't know if we even recognize the value of just even that. But then even like what we just did on Saturday with our leaders is to take a whole day and to carve it out and say, this is not just for business. It's not just to do stuff, but it's to be with each other and to rest and to take time to reevaluate ourselves and where we're at, because eventually the world will take that from us. It'll keep giving or keep taking, and we'll be feeling compelled to give. So take a moment and reevaluate. How are you doing with resting and being intentional? How are you carving out time? How are you making space? Do you have margin in your life, or is it bumper to bumper? Are you from one event to the next event? Does your calendar have any breaks? Does your calendar have any days off? It is so good to just take a day off. And I know that it feels like it's impossible, but if you don't find a way to do that, it'll eventually be taken from you, whether you've worked yourself to death, put yourself in a hospital because you're overworking, or you're so stressed out that you have to walk away from it all. So before we ever get to any of those places, let's find healthy practices and balances. Just like Jesus, he said, I don't even have time to eat. Let's go. So think about that this week. Ponder that. Know that even in the middle of your busy schedules, Jesus is right there with you. In the middle of that feels like chaos and unrest, he is in there offering rest for us. So we will see you next week.